The Vorthak Empire had been conquering worlds for over 1,000 years, and they were very good at it. Their ships looked like giant metal insects, covered in weapons that could melt entire planets. These bioships didn't just blow things up. They dissolved everything they touched with green acid that ate through metal, stone, and flesh alike. Admiral Thexmore was one of their best commanders. He had destroyed 47 different civilizations in his long career. Today, he stood on the bridge of his massive flagship, watching his latest victory unfold on the screens around him. Below them, a human colony world was dying in the most horrible way possible. The planet had been beautiful once, rolling green hills, sparkling blue oceans, and cities full of 3 million people living their normal lives. Children playing in parks, families eating dinner together, workers heading home after long days. All of that was gone now. Streams of molecular acid poured down from the Vorthak ships like deadly rain. Where the green liquid touched the ground, everything began to melt. Buildings turned into puddles of steaming metal, trees dissolved into nothing. The very air itself became poison that burned anyone who tried to breathe it. The Admiral watched the tactical displays with cold satisfaction. Red dots on his screen showed where human cities used to be. Now those dots were turning black as the acid ate everything away. 3 million people had woken up on this planet yesterday morning. By tonight there would be nothing left but bubbling oceans of chemical soup. "Sir, the cleansing is proceeding perfectly," reported his tactical officer, a younger Vorthak who still got excited about destroying worlds. "Our bioweapons have dissolved 90% of the surface infrastructure. No human survivors detected." Thexmore clicked his sharp mandibles together, which was how his species showed approval. The sound echoed through the bridge like breaking glass. "Excellent work, Commander Vextal. How long until the planet is completely sterilized?" "Another 6 hours. Admiral, the acid will eat through the planetary crust and reach the core. The entire world will become uninhabitable for the next 1,000 years. This was how the Vorthak Empire operated. They didn't just conquer worlds, they made sure nothing could ever live on them again. It was their way of sending a message to other species: surrender immediately or watch your entire civilization melt away. The Admiral had been doing this for so long that watching worlds die felt routine to him. He remembered when destroying a planet used to feel important, even exciting. Now it was just another day at work. The humans were the 48th species he had helped wipe out. Soon they would be completely extinct, just like all the others. Intelligence. "Report, Admiral," another officer called out. "Our scouts confirm there are no human military ships in this entire star system. Their navy scattered and ran away months ago when we first arrived. The humans have no organized resistance left." Thexmore nodded slowly. The human military had been pathetically weak. Their ships were small and slow, their weapons barely scratched Vorthak armor, and their tactics were simple enough for a child to predict. The few battles they had fought were over in minutes. Most human ships had simply fled rather than fight. "What about their final supply depot?" the Admiral asked. "Still orbiting the dying star in the Kepler system, sir. Our scouts report it's lightly defended. Maybe a few dozen cargo ships and some old defense platforms. Nothing that could threaten even one of our smaller vessels." The Admiral allowed himself a rare smile. Soon the human species would be nothing but a footnote in Vorthak history books. Their homeworld, Earth, would be the final target. After that, this entire region of space would belong to the Empire. He looked out at the dying world below and felt proud of his work. The galaxy was full of weak species that thought they could resist the Vorthak Empire. They were all wrong. Every single one of them learned the same lesson in the end. The Empire always won. In the empty space between star systems, where no light could reach and no sound could travel, something enormous was hiding. The UES Retribution floated completely still in the darkness, looking like a dead piece of metal drifting through the void. But this ship was very much alive, and it was humanity's greatest secret. For 6 long months, the Retribution had been running what the crew called ghost mode. Every light was turned off, every engine was silent, and even the crew's conversations happened in whispers. The ship was so well hidden that it might as well have been invisible. Even if alien scouts flew right past it, Their sensors would show nothing but empty space. Captain Lee Hyun sat in his command chair, studying the glowing screens that showed him where the enemy fleets were moving. His face looked tired and worn from months of stress, lit up by the soft blue light from his tactical displays. He had been watching the Vorthak Empire destroy human colonies one by one, forced to stay hidden while millions of his people died. The Retribution was not like any other ship humans had ever built. It was 20 kilometers long, so big that you could fit entire cities inside it. 50,000 people lived and worked in its metal corridors, moving quietly through passages that seemed to go on forever. They had been living like ghosts for half a year, waiting for their moment to strike back. Every person on the ship knew they were carrying humanity's last hope. If the Retribution failed, there would be no second chances. Earth would fall and humans would become extinct, like so many other species the Vorthak had destroyed. The pressure was enormous, but somehow the crew kept working, kept believing, kept preparing for the battle that would decide everything. Chief Engineer Park Soo approached the captain's chair, his footsteps barely making a sound on the metal floor. Like everyone else on the ship, he had learned to move quietly. "Captain," he said in a voice barely louder than a whisper, "the quantum fold drives are finally ready. We've been secretly stealing power from that nearby star's outer layer for weeks now. The prototype weapons are all online and ready to fire." Captain Hyun nodded slowly. The ship around them was filled with technology that shouldn't exist. Human scientists had worked day and night for years to build weapons that broke the normal rules of physics. They had engines that could fold space itself, allowing the ship to appear anywhere instantly. They had shields that could stop weapons powerful enough to destroy planets. They had guns that could crack moons in half. The problem was that humans barely understood how any of it worked. They had built this incredible war machine by copying alien technology, stealing enemy blueprints, and making desperate scientific breakthroughs under pressure. Half the weapon systems were still experimental. Nobody knew for sure if they would work when the shooting started. But it was all they had. Every human colony that had been destroyed had sent its research data to the Retribution before dying. Every defeated human ship had transmitted its battle recordings so the engineers could learn from their mistakes. All of humanity's knowledge, desperation, and hope had been poured into this one massive ship. "Sir," Park Soo continued quietly, "the crew is ready. Everyone knows what we're about to do. They're scared, but they're ready to fight." Captain Hyun looked around the bridge at his officers. These people had given up everything to serve on this ship. They had watched their homeworlds burn while staying hidden, following orders to wait until the perfect moment. Now that moment had finally arrived. "Send the signal to all departments," he whispered. "It's time to drop our cloak and show the galaxy what humans can do when we're pushed too far." Deep Echo Station was the kind of place where you could buy anything and sell everything, as long as you didn't ask too many questions. It floated in the empty space between the civilized galaxy and the wild frontier, where smugglers, traders, and information dealers from dozens of different alien species came to do business. The station had one important rule: no fighting. Everyone was welcome as long as they kept their weapons holstered and their politics to themselves. The cantinas on Deep Echo were always busy, filled with the strange mix of sounds that happened when creatures from different worlds tried to communicate. Mechanical translators buzzed and clicked, converting alien languages into something everyone could understand. The air smelled like a mixture of exotic spices, engine fuel, and the recycled atmosphere that all space stations shared. Chaktar was a successful merchant from the Nexari species, which looked like giant praying mantises with too many arms and glowing compound eyes. He had been trading in this part of the galaxy for 20 years and knew how to read the signs when something big was happening. Right now, all the signs were pointing toward trouble. He sat across from his business partner Vexilon, a Keltharian, who looked like a walking crystal sculpture that changed colors based on his emotions. The two aliens had been working together for years, sharing information and splitting profits from their trading routes. But today, they weren't talking about cargo shipments or market prices. "I'm telling you, the sensor readings are getting stranger every week," Chaktar said. his translator device clicking nervously as he spoke. My ship's computer detected a massive gravity signature in the Tau Ceti system last month, something enormous, maybe 20 kilometers long, but when I sent a probe to investigate, there was nothing there. Just empty space and cosmic dust. Vexlon's crystalline body shifted from blue to worried purple. You're not the only one reporting these ghost contacts. 3 of my other trading partners have seen similar readings. Whatever it is, it's big enough to bend space-time around itself, but it disappears before anyone can get a good look at it. The insectoid merchant leaned forward, lowering his voice even though the cantina was loud enough that nobody could overhear them. There's something else. My sources in the communication networks have been picking up human military transmissions in supposedly empty sectors, coded messages with coordinates that lead to nothing but void space. The encryption is more advanced than anything humans should be able to create. This was the part that really worried both aliens. Everyone in the galaxy knew that humans were primitive. Their ships were small and clunky, their weapons were basic, and their technology was centuries behind most other species. The Vorthak Empire had been crushing human resistance for months, and most traders assumed the war would be over soon. But the sensor data told a different story. Something was moving through the dark spaces between stars, something massive enough to show up on long-range scanners, but advanced enough to disappear when anyone came looking. The mathematics suggested an object with the mass of a small moon, but with energy signatures that didn't match any known technology. Other conversations in the cantina began to quiet down as more traders started sharing similar stories. A Zephyrian freight captain mentioned detecting impossible energy readings near a dying star. A Morgani information broker whispered about intercepted human communications that seemed to be coordinating something big. Even the normally talkative Arillan pilots were speaking in hushed tones about strange encounters in the outer rim. The fear was spreading through Deep Echo Station like a virus. If the humans really were building something in secret, something large enough to register on sensors from light years away, then everything everyone thought they knew about this war was wrong. Vexilon's colors shifted to deep red, which meant he was genuinely frightened. Chakta, what if the humans aren't as beaten as the Empire claims? What if they've been preparing something while everyone thought they were defeated? The insectoid merchant's compound eyes reflected the dim cantina, lights as he considered the terrible possibility. If humanity had somehow built a weapon capable of challenging the Vorthak Empire, then the entire balance of power in the galaxy was about to change. Kepler Station had been humanity's last major supply depot in this sector of space, and Admiral Thexmore expected to destroy it easily. His fleet of bioships surrounded the station like hungry predators, circling wounded prey. The human defenders had nowhere to run, and nothing that could seriously damage Vorthak vessels. This should have been another routine massacre. The Admiral stood on his bridge, watching the tactical displays show his ships moving into attack formation. Kepler Station was a massive structure that had taken humans decades to build, filled with fuel depots, weapon stockpiles, and repair facilities. 20,000 people lived and worked there, mostly engineers and logistics personnel who kept the human war effort supplied. "Begin the assault!" Thexmore ordered. "Dissolve their outer defenses first, then move in for the kill." Green streams of molecular acid poured from his bioships toward the station's defensive platforms. The human weapons fired back desperately, but their primitive lasers and missiles barely scratched the Empire's living hulls. Everything was going exactly according to plan. Then the humans did something that surprised even the experienced Admiral. Instead of surrendering or trying to evacuate, they launched every cargo ship they had directly at his fleet. These weren't warships. They were converted freight haulers, mining vessels, and transport craft that had never been designed for combat. "Sir, the human cargo ships are on collision courses," his tactical officer reported with confusion. "They're not even trying to fight. They're just flying straight at us." Thexmore clicked his mandibles in disgust. Primitive mammals. They're so desperate they're using suicide attacks. How pathetic. But as the first converted cargo hauler slammed into one of his biocruisers, the Admiral realized this wasn't ordinary desperation. The explosion was far too big, far too bright. The human ship had been loaded with antimatter, enough concentrated energy to power a small city, all released in a single devastating blast. The biocruiser simply vanished in a ball of pure white light. One moment it was there, a kilometer-long living ship with thousands of crew members. The next moment, there was nothing but expanding plasma and debris. "What was that?" Thexmore demanded. Before anyone could answer, more cargo ships reached his fleet. Each one carried volunteers who knew they were flying to their deaths, but who were determined to take as many enemies with them as possible. The explosions lit up space like newborn stars, each blast powerful enough to gut even the largest. Vorthak vessels. The coordinated suicide attack carved through half his fleet in minutes. Ships that had conquered dozens of worlds were destroyed by converted garbage haulers, piloted by desperate humans who refused to give up. The Admiral watched in shock as his supposedly invincible armada was torn apart by beings he had considered primitives. But Vorthak bioships were designed to survive damage. Their living hulls began healing almost immediately, growing new armor and weapons to replace what had been destroyed. Within a few hours, the surviving vessels would be whole again, ready to finish what they had started. "Prepare to execute the survivors," Thexmore ordered, his voice filled with cold anger. "Make them pay for this insult." That's when his sensor officer's voice cracked with panic. "Admiral, long-range sensors are detecting something massive emerging from fold space. The energy signature is completely unknown. It's not in any of our databases." The tactical display flickered and changed, showing something that shouldn't exist. Contact so large that the computer had trouble calculating its size, appearing from nowhere, as space itself seemed to bend around its arrival. Then the thing fully materialized, and Admiral Thexmore felt true fear for the first time in his long career. 20 kilometers of angular human engineering hung in space before his fleet, covered in weapons that made his bioships look like children's toys. The impossible vessel was larger than some moons, bristling with technology that violated everything. The Empire knew about human capabilities. The massive ship hung motionless for a moment, like a mountain studying insects. Then it opened communications, and a human voice echoed across every frequency in the system. The voice that came through the communication systems was calm, steady, and absolutely terrifying in its quiet confidence. Captain Lee Hyun spoke like a man who held the power of gods in his hands and wasn't afraid to use it. "This is Captain Lee Hyun of the UES Retribution. You wanted to burn our galaxy. Let me show you what fire really looks like." Admiral Thexmore had exactly 3 seconds to process those words before the human Dreadnought opened fire. What happened next redefined everything the Vortak Empire thought they knew about warfare. The Retribution's weapons didn't just shoot, they erased things from existence. Beams of pure energy, brighter than stars, lanced out from the massive human ship and touched 3 of the Admiral's largest biocruisers. The Imperial vessels, each one a kilometer long and capable of destroying planets, simply vanished in expanding. Clouds of superheated gas. No explosion, no debris field. Just there one moment, gone the next, turned into glowing plasma that spread through space like deadly fog. "Impossible," Thexmore whispered, staring at his tactical displays. His ships were designed to survive direct hits from planet-killer weapons. They had bio-armor that could regenerate from almost any damage, hulls that adapted to whatever attacked them. But whatever the humans were using went right through their defenses like they weren't even there. The remaining Vorthak ships tried to fight back, pouring concentrated fire at the human Dreadnought. Weapons that could crack moons, acid streams that dissolved anything they touched, even experimental plasma cannons that tore holes in space itself. All of it struck the Retribution's shields and did absolutely nothing. The human ship didn't even slow down. It moved through the Imperial fleet like a shark swimming through a school of fish, its massive bulk somehow dancing between enemy attacks with impossible grace. The Retribution could turn and twist in ways that violated every law of physics, appearing here one moment and there the next. "How is it moving like that?" demanded the Admiral's tactical officer, his voice cracking with panic. "Ships that size shouldn't be able to maneuver at all, let alone perform impossible turns." But the human Dreadnought wasn't following normal rules. Its quantum drives bent space around the ship, allowing it to slide through dimensions that other vessels couldn't even detect. 1 second it was a light minute away. The next it was right on top of a Vorthak cruiser, cutting it in half with weapons that seemed to ignore the laws of reality. Admiral Thexmore watched another of his ships dissolve under focused particle beams that somehow burned hotter than the core of a star. "Where did this monster come from?" he whispered. "Our intelligence report said humans had nothing larger than destroyers. Their technology was supposed to be primitive, centuries behind ours." His sensor officer was frantically scanning the human vessel, trying to understand what they were facing. "Admiral, the energy readings from that ship, it's using technology I've never seen before, power sources that shouldn't exist, weapons that operate on principles not in any of our databases. How did these humans build something like this?" The answer was written in the wreckage of human colonies scattered across the galaxy. Every world the Empire had destroyed had transmitted its research data before dying. Every defeated human ship had sent its battle recordings to secret locations. All of humanity's accumulated knowledge, desperation and pure rage had been poured into building this one impossible vessel. The Retribution wasn't just a warship. It was humanity's technological singularity given physical form, a concentration of scientific breakthroughs that had been achieved through pure necessity. When your entire species faces extinction, you either evolve beyond your limitations or you die. As the massive human Dreadnought moved closer to his flagship, Admiral Thexmore finally understood the terrible truth. The shadow of the Retribution fell across his bridge, 20 kilometers of human engineering, blocking out the stars themselves. Humanity hadn't been defeated. They had been learning, building, preparing for this exact moment. And now their answer to genocide hung above him like a mountain made of metal and fury. Across the Kepler system, alien trading ships and neutral observers watched the battle with growing amazement and terror. What they were seeing shouldn't have been possible. The massive human Dreadnought wasn't just winning against the Vorthak Empire's finest fleet. It was making the fight look easy. The Retribution moved through space like it could read the future. Every time an Imperial bioship tried to flank it, the human vessel was already turning to meet the attack. When enemy commanders attempted coordinated strikes, the Dreadnought somehow knew exactly where to position itself to avoid the worst damage while delivering devastating counterattacks. It was like watching someone play a game where they already knew every move their opponent would make. Deep inside the Retribution, Chief Engineer Park Soo stood in the ship's massive reactor chamber, surrounded by technology that hummed with barely controlled power. The quantum cores around him glowed, like captured pieces of stars, each one generating more energy than most planets used in a year. The air itself seemed to vibrate with raw power. His engineering teams moved between control panels that monitored systems no human had ever dreamed of building just a few years ago. Gravity manipulators that could bend space itself, shields that existed in multiple dimensions at once, and weapons that fired concentrated pieces of the Big Bang itself. "Sir," called out Lieutenant Kim, one of his junior engineers who had been monitoring the combat systems, "the AI is performing way beyond what we expected. It's operating at 3 times the efficiency we thought was possible. How is this happening, Park?" Sue smiled, but it wasn't a happy expression. It was the grim smile of someone who understood exactly how much suffering had gone into creating this moment. "Lieutenant, we didn't just build a warship. We built something much more dangerous than that." He gestured at the screens showing the battle outside, where their ship was systematically destroying vessels that had conquered hundreds of worlds. Every human colony that the Empire burned sent us their research data before they died. Every ship they destroyed transmitted its battle recordings to secret locations. Every defeat taught us something new about how to fight them. The young engineer looked confused, so Park continued. "We took all of that information, millions of deaths worth of data, and we fed it into the most advanced artificial intelligence humanity had ever created. Then we gave that AI control of the most powerful weapons we could build." Lieutenant Kim's eyes widened as he began to understand. The Retribution wasn't just following pre-programmed tactics. It was learning, adapting and evolving its strategies in real time based on the accumulated knowledge of every human who had died fighting the Empire. On the bridge, Captain Lee Hyun watched his impossible ship tear through the enemy fleet with mechanical precision. Each movement was perfect, each shot precisely calculated to cause maximum damage. The ship's AI systems had analyzed every battle the Vorthak had ever fought, studied every weakness in their bioships, and learned from every mistake humans had made. The result was a vessel that fought like it had been battling the Empire for centuries instead of minutes. Every human death in this war had purchased a piece of knowledge. Every destroyed world had revealed another Imperial weakness. Every moment of suffering had been transformed into data that made the retribution smarter, faster, and more deadly. Matsensato. Empire had taught humanity how to build the perfect weapon against them, and they had done it by showing no mercy to human colonies. Every act of cruelty had been carefully recorded, analyzed, and turned into tactical information that now guided the Dreadnought's weapons. As another Imperial biocruiser dissolved under the Retribution's fire, alien observers throughout the system realized they were witnessing something unprecedented. This wasn't just a battle. It was the birth of a new kind of warfare, where accumulated suffering could be transformed into unstoppable vengeance. The shadow of humanity's mountain of war stretched across the burning stars, and everyone watching knew the galaxy would never be the same again. Admiral Thexmore had conquered 47 different civilizations in his long career, and he had never faced anything like this. As his fleet crumbled around him, he threw every weapon the Vorthak Empire had ever developed at the human Dreadnought. Nothing worked. His bioships began reshaping themselves in the middle of battle, their living hulls flowing like liquid metal to adapt to the human weapons. Ships that had been sleek cruisers transformed into heavily armored fortresses, growing new weapons and thicker armor plating. Others split apart into multiple smaller vessels, trying to overwhelm the Retribution with numbers. The human ship didn't even seem to notice. Its weapons simply adjusted their targeting, cutting through the morphing bioships like a hot knife through butter. Whatever material the Empire's vessels were made of, the Retribution's guns treated it like paper. "Deploy the planet-killer spores," Thexmore ordered desperately. These were the Empire's most feared biological weapons, microscopic organisms that could eat through any known material and reproduce fast enough to consume entire worlds in days. The spores had never failed to destroy their targets. The deadly cloud of invisible death spread toward the human Dreadnought, billions of tiny killers ready to devour the ship from the inside out. But when they reached the Retribution's shields, something impossible happened. The spores simply died on contact, as if the human ship was surrounded by some kind of energy field that made life itself impossible. In desperation, the Admiral authorized the use of experimental weapons that the Empire had never dared to test in real combat. Reality-tearing bombs that opened holes in space-time itself, causing local areas of space to fold in on themselves. Gravity weapons that could crush matter into singularities. Even prototype time distortion fields that were supposed to slow enemy ships to a crawl. All of it was useless. The Retribution moved through attacks that should have destroyed entire solar systems, like they were gentle breezes. The massive human ship seemed to exist partially outside normal space, sliding between dimensions in ways that made the Empire's most advanced weapons miss their target entirely. Meanwhile, the battle was being broadcast across subspace frequencies, to every corner of the galaxy. On hundreds of worlds, alien species gathered around communication screens to watch something that changed everything they thought they knew about warfare. The humans, who everyone had dismissed as primitive mammals, with crude technology, were systematically destroying the most powerful military force in galactic history. Their single Dreadnought was making the Empire's million-year legacy of conquest look like a joke. On the crystal world of Vextara, the ruling council watched in stunned silence as human weapons carved through bioships that had conquered their system decades ago. On the trading stations of the Nexari Collective, merchants whispered in amazement as the primitive human vessel demonstrated technology that made their own ships look like ancient relics. "Emergency retreat," Admiral Thexmore finally ordered, his voice cracking with panic. "All ships withdraw immediately." But escape proved just as impossible as victory. The human Dreadnought's quantum drives allowed it to fold space around itself, appearing instantly wherever the fleeing Imperial ships tried to run. No matter which direction his vessels fled, the Retribution was always there waiting for them, perfectly positioned to deliver the killing blow. The Admiral watched his tactical display as ship after ship vanished from his screen. Vessels that had terrorized entire sectors were being picked off one by the impossible human weapon. His mighty fleet, which had started the day with enough firepower to sterilize systems, was being hunted to extinction. His own flagship shuddered as the Retribution's weapons found their mark. Hull breaches opened along the ship's sides, venting atmosphere and crew members into the cold vacuum of space. Emergency lights flickered as power systems failed one by one. With his command deck dying around him and his fleet reduced to burning wreckage, Admiral Thexmore managed one final transmission before the end came. His voice was barely a whisper, filled with the kind of fear that comes from realizing you've made a terrible, fatal mistake. How did we underestimate them so badly? Then the UES Retribution's shadow fell across his flagship one last time, and the Admiral learned the final lesson of his career. When you push someone to the edge of extinction, sometimes they don't just fight back. They transcend everything you thought was possible. After the destruction of Admiral Thexmore's fleet, news of humanity's impossible victory spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. On worlds that had been conquered by the Vorthak Empire, people who had given up hope suddenly began to believe that freedom might be possible after all. The UES Retribution didn't waste time celebrating its first victory. Captain Lee Hyun immediately began planning a campaign that would shake the foundations of the Empire itself. His massive Dreadnought started moving through Imperial space like a force of nature, appearing at one conquered world after another to deliver liberation with overwhelming firepower. The ship's quantum drives made it seem like magic to those who witnessed it. Space itself would begin to ripple and bend, reality twisting in ways that hurt to look at directly. Then the Retribution would materialize from nothing, 20 kilometers of human engineering dropping out of folded space like a mountain falling. From the sky, Imperial garrison commanders learned to fear that sight more than anything else in the universe. The arrival of the human Dreadnought meant their careers were about to end violently, along with their lives. No Vorthak force had managed to even scratch the Retribution's shields, let alone damage the ship itself. On Kepler Prime, a world that had been under Imperial control for 15 years, the local human resistance watched in amazement as their oppressors' bioships simply vanished under focused fire from the massive human vessel. The occupation force that had terrorized their planet for over a decade was gone in less than an hour. The same scene played out on world after world. The Retribution would arrive without warning, destroy whatever Imperial forces were present, then broadcast a simple message to the population below. You are free. Humanity remembers its own. Word of these liberations spread through underground networks that the Empire had never been able to completely shut down. On planets where humans lived as slaves or second-class citizens, secret radio transmissions carried news of their species' impossible warship. Communications officer Choi Min sat at her station on the Retribution's bridge, monitoring resistance broadcasts from across the galaxy. The messages she intercepted painted a picture of hope spreading like wildfire through human communities that had been crushed under Imperial rule. "Captain," she reported during one of their regular briefings, "I'm picking up transmissions from 17 different worlds where human resistance cells have declared open rebellion. They're using our victories as inspiration to rise up against their local occupation forces." She paused to listen to another incoming message, her face lighting up with something close to wonder. "Sir, they're calling us humanity's sword in their broadcasts. Some of the transmissions are calling you the Angel of Liberation." Captain Lee Hyun nodded grimly as he studied the tactical displays showing Imperial fleet movements throughout their territory. Each world they freed added momentum to their campaign, proving to both humans and aliens that the Empire could be beaten. The psychological impact was just as important as the military victories, but the captain understood that their hardest battles were still ahead of them. So far, they had only fought the Empire's outer defenses and regional fleets. The truly dangerous weapons were deeper in Imperial space, on the Heartworlds where the Vorthak had spent centuries building defenses that could sterilize entire solar systems. "How many more worlds have we liberated this month?" Hyun asked. 43, sir, Choi, Min replied. And intelligence reports suggest that the Empire is pulling back their forces, consolidating around their core systems. They're scared, Captain. For the first time in 1,000 years, the Vorthak Empire is afraid. The captain allowed himself a small smile at that news. Fear was a powerful weapon, and they were wielding it effectively. But he also knew that desperate enemies were the most dangerous kind. When the Empire finally decided to make their stand, they would throw everything they had at the retribution. The 1,000-year Vorthak reign was crumbling in months, brought down by the shadow of a single human ship and the refusal of humanity to surrender even when facing extinction. But the war was far from over, and the worst fighting was yet to come. The war that had raged across the galaxy for 2 years was finally over. The Vorthak Empire, which had ruled for 1,000 years, had surrendered after the UES retribution, systematically dismantled their core fleet, and liberated over 200 worlds. Now, representatives from 57 different alien species had gathered on the rebuilt New Kepler station to negotiate what everyone assumed would be the terms of humanity's new galactic empire. The station's main conference hall buzzed with nervous energy as delegates from across the galaxy tried to understand what humanity wanted from their victory. Most of them had brought tribute offerings, rare minerals, advanced technology, even entire star systems that they were prepared to hand over to avoid humanity's wrath. The alien representatives had seen what the retribution could do. They had watched recordings of Imperial fleets being destroyed in minutes by weapons that seemed to ignore the laws of physics. They knew that humanity now possessed the power to conquer the entire galaxy if they chose to, and everyone expected them to do exactly that. Captain Lee Hyun entered the conference hall wearing a simple military uniform, followed by only a small honor guard. He didn't look like a conqueror who had just toppled the greatest empire in galactic history. He looked tired, older than his years, like someone who had seen too much death and just wanted it to end. The alien delegates studied him carefully as he took his place at the head of the conference table. Here was the human who had commanded the impossible ship that changed everything. They expected demands for surrender, tribute payments, or territorial concessions. Instead, Captain Hyun simply stated humanity's position in words that would be remembered for centuries. Leave us alone, leave each other alone, and the galaxy stays peaceful. The silence that followed was deafening. Ambassador Talveran of the Nexari Collective, her insectoid features showing confusion, finally spoke up. Her translators clicked nervously as she tried to understand what she had just heard. Captain, your vessel possesses enough firepower to dominate entire sectors of space. Surely humanity desires territory, tribute, resource rights, or some form of galactic dominance. What do you really want from this victory? Captain Hyun's response was quiet, but carried the weight of absolute conviction. We desire to never build another ship like the Retribution. That vessel exists because you forced us to transcend our limitations or face extinction. We had to become something we never wanted to be, just to survive. Don't make that mistake again. The fur. Alien delegates began to understand that this wasn't a typical victory negotiation. Humanity hadn't fought this war to conquer the galaxy. They had fought it to survive. The Retribution wasn't a tool of empire building. It was a warning written in quantum fire and human determination. We will return to our worlds and live in peace, Hyun continued. We will trade with those who wish to trade with us, and we will help those who ask for help. But we will not rule over anyone, and we will not allow anyone to rule over us. The age of galactic empires is over. Ambassador Talveran looked around the conference table at the other delegates, all of whom were struggling to process what they were hearing. Captain, what guarantee do we have that humanity will honor these terms? What stops you from changing your minds and using your power to conquer us later? Captain Hyun gestured toward the viewport, where the UES Retribution hung in space like a metallic mountain. The massive Dreadnought cast its shadow across the assembled alien fleet, a reminder of what happened when humanity was pushed too far. The Retribution is your guarantee, he said simply. As long as the galaxy remains peaceful, she will remain silent. But if any species tries to build another empire, if anyone attempts genocide or enslaves entire worlds, Then humanity's sword will fall again. We learned how to build one impossible ship. Don't make us prove we can build a fleet of them. As the massive human dreadnought prepared to depart New Kepler Station, its shadow fell across the assembled alien vessels one final time. The delegates watched in silent awe as 20 kilometers of human engineering slowly turned away from their fleet and began the journey back to human space. The galaxy had learned an important lesson that day. Some species, when pushed to the very edge of extinction, don't simply fight back. They transcend everything their enemies thought was possible. Humanity's greatest weapon had never been technology or firepower, but the absolute refusal to surrender hope, even in their darkest. How the stars burned with the light of peace, watched over by the shadow of a mountain made of human defiance.